Hello, all, and welcome to a footy matchups analysis and review of what turned out to be a classic game of GWS versus Brisbane last Saturday night. I'm Luke. Joining me again is Jack. How are we
Hi,
today?
good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Now, Jack's going to take the lead here and been doing some background running down of the players and the like. But I'll be obviously here contributing as well. We're going to get almost straight into it, but I know Jack has got some interesting facts he wants to chat about, the Giants, because it has
Mm.
been for a team that halfway through last year looked like they were a downward spiral, and overall you could argue they were almost the informed team. But there is one stat that we want to get into before we look at the player analysis. Jack, let us have it about GWS and specifically their last three finals.
So the last three finals they've played in, the last final they played in 2023 was against Collingwood at the MCG. So that game, Collingwood got off to a quick start, scoring 2 goals before Giants would score the next five over the period of the next two quarters. They were absolutely smashing them in that game, and halfway through the third quarter, it all fell apart.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I was actually happened to be watching a replay of that game before this video, and just yesterday. And you're right; like they were all over. They were all over Collingwood. The game was done. They actually probably should have been a few more goals up, but yeah, it did, and it turned really quickly.
Yeah, the home ground advantage definitely did help Collingwood with 97,000 and majority being Collingwood
Yeah, and the
fans.
atmosphere was electric.
And it could be the issue for why Giants keep losing games is they don't have many fans to will them on.
Well, it is interesting that looking at that first week, the first final against Sydney. I mean, the crowd were
Yeah.
insane for. I know there were some Giant supporters, but it was fantastic for Sydney.
Yeah, they did get a very good crowd. It sold out,
Yeah, it was over
so
40,000. It was definitely a full house.
yeah, and the atmosphere was just electric when Heaney kicked that goal, then Amadi, and going to that game, also halfway through the third quarter, absolutely destroying the Swans, and then again they fell apart.
It was 27 points that day, and they probably had a bit more reward for effort on the scoreboard, although you could probably argue they could have been further up.
Yeah, they could have been further up that game. A few missed shots that they probably should have got. Peatling missed an easy one in the first, which was like 25 out directly in front. That was a poor miss.
Okay, yep.
And then the Brisbane game, the one we're
Oh,
talking about, that was the biggest choke of them all. They were killing them. The scores were 11. It was 11 goals to 4 at one
what was
stage.
that? Yeah, it was 11. It was a 40. Well, I think it was 12 goals to four. It was 46 points. 44, sorry,
Oh yeah.
44 points.
Yeah, so 44 points. Second highest comeback in finals history.
Yeah, I mean, that is, and we won't talk about the game it matched from 1970, whereas Collingwood supporters will ignore that one.
And a 1935 prelim was the biggest one. I don't know about that game,
Yeah, no, I can't say I was there or have much memory of that one either. So what's your theory? So that, I mean, they don't have a crowd. I mean, I know Collingwood,
yeah.
Giants were all over the Pies last year in the prelim, and the crowd got behind them. It definitely helped. I mean, the performance of Heaney was extraordinary against the Giants, and the crowd definitely got behind them there. But I mean, it was perhaps a 50-50 split between Giants and Brisbane
Yeah.
last week. That can't be the reason. You wouldn't think last week. So what do we think?
So their players haven't like the prelim. Giants playing in the prelim in 2023 was the first prelim they'd played in a while. I think since 2019. So
Yeah,
they
yeah,
went through a 4 year period without playing prelim. A very different list from that 2019. You've still
yeah.
got the experienced players like Toby Green, but I'm looking at this list. There's not many players that have stuck by that list from 2019 that are playing in this current list.
I do think it's got to have something to do. I mean, look, you can have bad luck, but psychologically, I think it's got to be. It's not a fitness thing because the stat they showed before the Sydney game, um, on the Channel 7 coverage was that the Giants under Adam Kingsley had not lost a game when in front of three-quarter time.
That comment did not age
It has
well.
not aged well at all. So there's got to be something to it of the moment getting to them and not quite doing the job. Although I think when we're having a look at it, they had a few games this year where that similar issue had occurred. Not as bad as what we saw in the finals,
Yeah.
but they did have the odd game against Carlton earlier on the season. Again, halfway through the third, it dropped off.
Yeah.
I think the Bombers the same.
St Kilda.
St Kilda, they hung on in that game, but
Yeah.
they got really run over. So, yeah, it's interesting. I also wonder if it's Craig McRae said it about Collingwood, where that trying to hang on to a game this year has become really difficult. And I wonder if that teams are starting to figure it out. They actually know a game plan to chart. They know teams are trying to hold on and have a game plan. And Giants slowed the game down. When they played Hawthorn, they quickened the game up. They took the game on.
Yeah.
And they came from 5 goals down and beat the informed team in the comp. So, yeah, it is an interesting one.
Yeah, Carlton also have a similar problem with choking in close games. They're not great at close games, but that tends to be a few teams. Collingwood, again, being the best team this year at close games.
Yeah. So it will be interesting to see next year because I do think, and again, without wanting to bang on too much about Collingwood, but I think Collingwood last year were the team who would defend the lead. They didn't care how much they won by. They would just make sure that they won and they would slow it down to win games by. And I think other teams have jumped on that, but now it's gone the other way where other teams are now going, okay, we need to take this game on. Brisbane, they transformed their game. Sydney didn't continue playing. Sydney have been the ultimate team of they will play to get there in the end. And how many times have they started 5 goals down and run over the
Sydney
top?
do that a lot. Even in that Port Adelaide game where Hawthorn looked like they were running all over them, scores a level, they attacked and kicked 3 goals in a row. So there's obviously a change in mindset in the AFL currently.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that really excellent review. But we're going to now get into the player matchups where we'll be ranking every player from this GWS Brisbane game. I'll get Jack to go through it. We'll be going 5 or 6 players at a time, and we'll be going through ranking the players and having a discussion as to why we ranked them the way we did. All right, so this is the bit we enjoy, ranking the players. This is from the GWS Brisbane game. Now, it doesn't mean if the players are ranked 35 out of 44 they've had a bad game. It does mean that we just think other players have had a better game. I've probably, looking back, there are a couple of players from our Port Adelaide Hawthorn game where maybe it was a bit harsh, but I'm going to blame Jackie a bit more. Took a little bit more of a lead on this one. Well, at least agreed more with me. So, Jack, if you want to get started on our first list from the players, our worst player on ground, who was it?
It was Logan Morris. He didn't do much. He's a key forward. They sometimes do go missing. When you do also have Danaher and Hipwood competing with him as a key forward. So sometimes there's always one of those 3 guys seems to go missing for Brisbane. There's not many games where they're all 3 of them are firing.
No, well, even 2 of them firing seems to be a bit. I think he did one good play in the first quarter, but was subbed off early. And then so I noticed Hipwood and Rayner both in those bottom 6. So remarkable they won with so many players down.
Well, 3 forwards in the bottom 5 for Brisbane.
Yeah, and look, Payne, I think, he did his best, but
Jesse Hogan's
he was just no match for him. So we move on to the next list of players. I don't know if I was harsh on Lockie Keefe. It was interesting they went with him over the guy likes of Riccardi and Callum Brown. I don't know if they'll. I know he gave him an extra ruck option. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I thought Callum Brown. I respect Callum Brown. I think he's a good player. He played very well in that prelim against Collingwood last year.
Yeah, he had some. He had some ordinary moments. He did have
Yeah.
some good. I think that's the thing is. I think Lockie Keefe. Look, he missed that shot for goal when they really could have iced the game. He's probably more solid. I think Callum Brown gives you some good stuff, but he gives you some ordinary stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Riccardi was injured. He seemed to be because it was Hogan and Riccardi, Hogan, Riccardi, and Brown. So last
He
year,
dropped off, but I'm
yeah.
not sure if he got injured or not.
And I know Cadman's come in, but Cadman, he's another one on
Yeah.
this list here where,
But he has been having a good year.
yeah. Oh,
This
look,
year, Cameron. Just a young player.
yeah, I think Cadman's out. I was just a bit surprised that Lockie Keefe going to spot. Bailey's disappointing.
Yeah. So good. So promising last year. He was one of Brisbane's better players last year.
He's going to have to lift. He's going to have to step up if they're going to win this year. For me, I
Yeah.
think he's him and Rayner. They're just, yeah, just probably disappointments, really.
Yeah, Charlie Cameron also was ranked pretty low down.
Yeah. So he's on the next page. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. Look, it'll be interesting to see how it goes against the Cats. All right, I reckon he could have a big one.
He does suit the slower teams a bit more. Giants do have a bit more pace in their forward, so we'll see about that.
Yeah, look, Starcevic and Leicester we ranked down. They were okay. I actually think they were probably a couple of players who the lack of midfield pressure hurt them. That could be a bit of could be one of those ones where the coaches actually ranked them a bit higher, but just from what, and again, the midfield weren't helping them out for 2.5 quarters of the game there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with you there. The Brisbane midfield was smashed for 2.5 quarters, and then it turned.
Yeah.
It's just so weird how it flies.
It's some interesting names on that next page. Taylor, who's I don't know, that's a bit. It might be.
I thought you were a bit nice to him.
Oh, you thought it was a bit nice? Jeez,
Danaher killed him.
I know. Again, I don't. Again, it's a bit like with Starcevic and Leicester being ranked that low. It's not always the defender spot. If you're left 1-on-1, it makes it very difficult, and the lack of pressure from we're talking about the Brisbane midfield being poor at the end. Giants midfield, it just was flying out of that forward line and flying through the midfield, and yeah, I thought if anything Taylor was ranked. We were ranking Taylor a bit harshly, but it's interesting you say the other way. Lockie Whitfield didn't have the usual impact. Kelly, I think his meters gained was like 170 or something.
That's not good for Kelly.
No, Kelly's usually in the high 400s, and even with low possession numbers. So yeah, they'll be disappointed. Moving on to the next page. Interesting. Isaac Cumming is wanting out. He actually look. He's a good solid. I thought he actually had a decent game for the Giants.
Yeah, might want to get out of that losing culture though.
Wow, it's a funny culture. It's almost the St Kilda of the 2000s culture of it's a winning culture, but not premiership winning culture.
Yeah.
I can't quite get over the line. Look, Lockie, Neal, and Daniels probably two that you wouldn't expect to see that low down the list.
Yeah. Lockie Neal was tagged out of it.
Yeah, and I think we've ranked Toby Bedford quite highly. He's carrying an injury. There's no doubt about that. It'll be interesting to see how he goes against the Cats. Because I don't know if they've got a great tagger for him.
No, not from memory.
Yeah, Tom Atkins, perhaps.
Is Tom Atkins going to make the team?
Wow, we'll see tonight. Tonight. Do they... I'm not sure who they'll do the run with role for there, but to win with Lockie Neal having minimal impact for him. He got better as the game went on, but that was obviously an accomplishment. Moving on to the next page, I'll tell you what, a guy who I reckon he was close to one of the worst players on ground, but really picked himself up was Dane Zork. Even watching some of the highlights again, he
cost them 2 or 3 goals.
He turned it over and made some bad errors. Yet back to the Zorko of this year for that second half. He was a guy who totally turned the game around. He was fantastic in the end.
Yeah, he's one of the more experienced players in the field.
Yep.
He's a very good player, always been reliable for Brisbane.
Yep.
There was a few questions on him last year, but he's stepped up so much this year.
Yeah, and I think the halfback flank move has been great. Callum Ward, I thought, was solid enough.
Yeah.
Thought he did a good job. As we get into the bit of 11 to 15, the usual kind of names you expect from the Dunkley, McInerney, good solid goers. A few from
Yeah.
I couldn't Briggs and McInerney. I thought was almost Briggs was probably dictated. It was probably like the game better for the first 2.5 quarters, but
Yeah.
McInerney got on top for the last quarter and a half.
I mean, McInerney's goal did swing the momentum completely.
It was big.
It was all Giants' way, and then he grabs it out the right, kicks it out.
and I thought he got right on top of Briggs from that point on. I thought Briggs was a little bit fumbly at key points, dropping back.
Yeah.
Look, at halftime he was as good as any, but again, Connor Iden, gosh, I'd love having him in my team. I reckon. I just rate him so highly. Moving on to the next 5 now.
10.
10 from 6 to 10. Well, let's go for it. Toby Green, look, 3 goals. I thought he stood up. I thought he did the job great.
He stood up. He wasn't great against Sydney. He was
he
quiet
was a
against
bit
Sydney, but he did step up this game. He did what you expect from an experienced player.
He kicked
a bit unlucky.
He kicked the crucial goals. I don't think you could ask much more. McCluggage, I thought he worked his way, almost like the grand final last year, worked his way into the game really well. Yeah. The other players, I reckon these top 8, and we'll get to the top 5 in a moment, but the top 5 I could find, but these players, like Toby Bedford, he just destroyed me.
Yeah.
That first half performance was superb.
Yeah, Giants will probably lose that game by 3 or 4 goals if Toby Bedford's not playing.
Well, it becomes a different game because he just, it becomes a different game. One guy, look, even now, Kalamachi, you could make an argument.
He was based on.
Yeah, you could. But look, you could make a case for a number of players being best on ground.
It was an even game.
It's the best game I've seen him play. He was fantastic. Even in the first half when the other players weren't playing well, I thought he was amazing.
He showed glimpses of brilliance in that Sydney game where he kicked the winner, but I didn't expect for him to play that well.
No, he was fantastic. Himmelberg, I thought he was outstanding on that back line.
I think you've ranked him a bit high here.
Yeah, but you did agree with the rankings. I'll put that on. But I thought he was excellent. I thought he really, his work off the halfback flank was and the back line was excellent throughout the night. Maybe Archie should have gone above in hindsight. But, well, next thing we're going to do, we're going to break down the top 5 players. We have a discussion because we had a good discussion here as to which way we rank these 5. So, and we'll continue that in just a second. All right, so we're going to look at the top 5 players on the ground, but we have split it here because, and I have to say, I am very willing to be convinced on. If this was Norman Smith, I'd be happy with any of these 5 players being given the Norman Smith medal. I thought they were all outstanding, and you could make a really strong case that each of these players was the best player on the ground.
Yeah.
Our number 5 player. Now, my number 5 player was Joe Danaher, but yours was Tom Green.
Yes, mine was Tom Green. So we'll talk about Joe Danaher first.
Yeah, you had him at 4. Yeah. I think we both agree. He won up the game in the end. That last 5 minutes was superb.
Incredible kick.
Oh, it was great. And again, it's a little bit like the grand final last year. If Brisbane win that game, you'd almost give the Norm Smith to Danaher.
I mean, if Danaher kicks that goal.
He kicks that goal and they win the game. So if that was the grand final and he won Norm Smith, you wouldn't begrudge him. You could absolutely understand why he'd get it. He stood up in the big moments. I can't think of any Joe Danaher, typical Joe Danaher moments. The goal from the boundary of his left
Incredible.
foot, just superb. He was so good in that last bit in particular.
He's proved all the haters wrong who wrote him off after that Collingwood game this year.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Now, my number 4 was Berry. You put him at number 2.
I had him at number 2.
Yeah. Again,
he was so good.
It's the best game I've seen him play. He was fantastic. He's got a few demons from last year's granny that overturned. Tell you what, he's gone a long way to overturn. He was fantastic. Again, I thought he was a consistent performer, but gee, he gave them that drive that Neil normally does. And you've got him at 2. I had him at 4. but yeah, I thought he was outstanding.
If he won Norm Smith, I wouldn't be begrudging.
Oh, absolutely. Again, another one that I wouldn't begrudge. Tom Green, you had him at 5. I had him at 3. I thought he just dominated the.
Yeah.
And
he dominated the first 2.5 quarters.
Well, I also don't rate Giants midfield. I think it pretty much is Tom Green and a few stragglers behind him. And again, he just keeps doing it. It's because he's so good. You could make a case he's the best in the comp right now. He's that good, and he carries that midfield so much. And he just and I actually think that's the problem. If you look at when the pressure's right on, I just don't think that he's so good for so long, but he needs help, and I just don't think he's got that extra help. Geez, I wish Hopper or Taranto back now, I reckon. Just someone.
Yeah, just one of those two.
One of those two just to give him a bit of help.
Both Hopper and Taranto will both be regretting that decision later down the line.
Yeah, look, his disposal efficiency, I think, was pretty low. That was probably the one point of where
and I felt he dropped off in the last quarter.
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I would argue he was playing at such a high standard. Yeah. But, yeah. Jesse Hogan.
Jesse Hogan, number 2.
Oh, I had him 2. You had him at 3. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. He couldn't do any more.
Yeah.
He was so good. And in a way, I'm like, well, was he the best player on the ground? But, yeah, again, probably if you were being extra critical, he probably didn't clunk the marks when they were trying to get it out of defence in that last bit. But, gee, that's picky. Yeah. He could have kicked 10. He
missed a sitter of a shot in the second.
Yeah.
Which, if he kicks that, I'd probably rank him number 2 over Berry.
Yeah. Look, I think it was one of the best forward games. He's been extraordinary this year. Like, he's...
What a story.
His career was done. But, I mean, it's before your time, Jack, but this is what he played like for me. This is what we thought he was going to be.
I do remember his run at Melbourne.
Yeah, his early run was fantastic, but then he just went off the rails. But credit to him, he's the best forward in the comp right now.
I would rather him on my side than Charlie Kerner.
I would agree. Yeah, right at the moment, you would have to say that Jesse Hogan, he's the number 1. I mean, the only player that I think you would consider as a forward over Jesse Hogan is Jeremy Cameron. He's the only one I would actually consider in that. To be in that class.
You rate Jeremy Cameron.
Oh, Jeremy Cameron's best. I would actually say, ironically, Jesse Hogan's actually a bit more consistent. Jeremy Cameron has some down games, but I think Jeremy Cameron's best is probably the best. But Jesse Hogan is missed a concern. That game on the way, it should have been a match-winning game. It should have been, but he didn't quite get there. But in the end,
we both agreed on number 1.
It was the one we agreed on in the top 5. Will Ashcroft. Yeah.
What a game from what a player.
I mean, the fact he rallied and got those clearances, but there were 2 moments for me. There was one, I think it was in the second quarter, where he's getting gang tackled by about 5 players and somehow got the handball out. It was ridiculous. He had no... And I thought, he must have thrown it. When you looked at it, no, he didn't. He just somehow got the handball off. And then I think it was the third quarter.
The karate kick?
Oh, the kick. I mean, I think it was Cameron got his 1 goal from that, but it was just extraordinary. On top of having a phenomenal game anyway.
Another incredible story coming back from the injury. Missed out on the granny last year.
Yeah, and his form actually makes me think that he makes me think they could potentially go all the way. I'm a bit concerned about the weather Saturday night, but I think if it's wet and windy and wild like it is today, I don't know if Brisbane's got it in them to win. Yeah. Not against a team as well coached as Geelong. But Will Ashcroft, he's the key, and potentially would have been the difference last year.
Yeah, you never know.
If he stays fit, then
maybe he plays instead of... I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure who. I'm trying to think of the midfield options they would have had. Perhaps Jared Berry. I know he might have been.
He was playing well before that grand final.
Yeah, true. I'm just trying to think of that team. But anyway, probably Jared Lyons would be the one who would have missed. Yeah. But Will Ashcroft. I mean, he's just a star, and apparently his brother's just as good. So Brisbane have got a good future ahead of them. But yeah, Will Ashcroft was the reason they are still in the hunt, and. Yeah, they're looking good. Now, we're going to do our first live show in probably by the time we get this one up and posted, about an hour away. So join us at around about 6:15 tonight on Thursday, the 19th of September, because we will be doing a live analysis of the teams. I think the team. I don't think Sydney and Port will have any. Well, one change because Marshall's out for Port, but I don't know if there'll be any. I think Geelong's Adams Matt. You're right. So there'll be each there, but Geelong, that's the one. They've got some very, very interesting decisions to make. And I'll be,
Who makes it? Hawkins?
Hawkins or Neil, or does Henry miss out? I think
Jack or Ollie?
Which one? Does Sam DeCon?
Tom Stewart. Oh, well, Tom Stewart's automatic in.
And we'll chat about it later, but if I was Geelong, I'd be dropping Reece Stanley. But I know, Sam DeConey. I think he's a better.
And Whitsuff?
I'd be doing, especially on a wet day. You don't. I just think Reece Stanley will become a liability.
Ruck is more important on a wet day than a dry day, but we'll talk about that at the live stream.
Later. Thanks for joining us, and we will be chatting soon. This was Luke and Jack Footy Matchup.
See ya.